morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me. We are here for round 5 of the TFC Mad Monday series. We are going to be racing on the Richmond Rollercoaster route, an event-only route which is not very often used, but man, I really love Richmond. It is one of my favourite courses. So we're going to descend from the start, down and back up the 23rd Street climb, down again and up the KOM reverse, which is actually the backside of Libby Hill, about 2 kilometres of flat, then up the East Main Street climb before we hit the flat circuit for 4 laps. Intermediate sprints around Broad Street as we first enter the flat circuit, and then the next 2 laps. There's no sprint on the penultimate lap before the final sprint finish. So off we go. Faster start than usual this time. These TFC Mad Monday races normally quite sedate, but this one is picking up the pace a little bit, set by the ART team. But as we go on to the little flat section and onto the first hill, everything starts to settle down and normal service is somewhat resumed as we sort of chill out a bit. I don't know if they actually expected to get away or not, but it was a fast start. Here we are at the bottom of the 23rd Street climb, and it's time to put the plan into action. Now, last week on the Champs-Élysées, I was beaten in the sprint by Martinelli, the Team Italy rider, and I suspected that if I let him come with us to the flat circuit, he would do exactly the same thing again. So, and there was 3 climbs before we got onto the flat circuit, and it was time to try and get rid of some of those big sprinters. So we just got to the front, gradually up the power to about 400 watts, which is around 4.5 watts a kilo for me. And as the road started to pick up 10%, 11%, it was time to out the saddle and really start pushing. And this allowed some gaps to open up around about 4 seconds, 5 seconds, and topping off at around 6 seconds. The only people that actually responded to this little move was Obriggs from the TFC team. They had brought numbers today, but yeah, they were the only ones that actually sent somebody across with me, and he would catch on as you see the gap back to everyone else around 5 or 6 seconds. So at the top of the hill, and it was just the 2 of us, and we went on to the descent. Then it was the bottom of, it's called the KOM reverse, but it's actually just the backside of Libby Hill. 20% at the bottom, but still as the gap had come down from the descent and the small flat section, you need to get back on the power again and continue to try and split this up, because I didn't want the sprinters with me. There was, if you look at the list on the right hand side, there's a lot of TFC riders. They came with big numbers. The Vikings, the Norwegian riders, they came with big numbers, but you could see the gap had started to open. My plan was working. As we got over Libby Hill and descended down the other side, we're joined by Iverson, one of the Vikings riders, and between him and the TFC rider, we knew there was no way that these two were going to help push the pace and keep a very small breakaway away. So it was all back together as we had come down at the bottom of Libby Hill. But the group itself was much, much smaller than it had been, and no sign of the big Italian. So that goes to the East Main Street climb, and you can just see how many Viking riders there are, how many TFC riders there are. So the group was still a little bit big for my liking. I was really looking to reduce this bunch down before we got to the flat section. So again, just sort of pushing on, 4.5 watts a kilo, 4 watts a kilo on the climb. But I realised around about here that I might have made a mistake, because TFC riders, I think 3 of them came past me, and I started to go, my legs kind of hurt a little bit after this, and I was worried that I'd put too much into the climbs early, and would they just pull away from me now, which they could have done. 3 riders, they would have dragged 1 Viking with them, but it would have been worth it. But they didn't. they settled in around 2.5, 3 watts a kilo, allowed me to get back on, and then allowed everyone else to get back on. So we'd been caught back, 4 TFC riders in the group, just the one Viking rider, and you can see again from the riders list, there are 3 Viking riders less than 10 seconds off the back of this group, and they would really need to push on. But as we come around this corner, this leads us to the first sprint, so I'm not sure if they would get back on. It was a bad time. I don't know if it was just a lapse of concentration from the Vikings, but definitely a mistake. Anyway, into the first sprint. Brady there from TFC hitting 10 watts a kilo, and indeed TFC would take 2 of the first 3 places there, with Brady, Kirsten and Iverson from the Vikings taking the 3rd spot. I think we maybe got 4th. I wasn't too concerned about intermediate sprints. This one's interesting. As we move forward a lap, the pace was nice and sedate. Everything had calmed down. There was a lot of chat. We were talking in the chat about COVID, and I wasn't paying attention. And you can see as we split up here, I've been busy sending a text message, and I haven't noticed that the group split up. And as we get up to this little roundabout, if you look at the webcam, you see me look up and look at the screen and go, oh crap, this race is just split up again. And there it is. Oh no. Power! So pay attention. Don't get caught out in race chat. Thankfully, I don't think I was the only one that got caught out, because there was a TFC rider with me and then 2 more up ahead. So I don't know if they'd all been caught or what happened with them. But had to hammer on and pull out a sprint just to get back. I knew if I got to the 2 TFC riders, they're going to bring me back in, because they're not going to give up their massive advantage just for the sake of shipping me. But David Hill from TFC took it, Marcus Amplatz from Team Italy in 2nd, from James Morgan's the Rhinos in 3rd. Quiet race from Rhinos though. They had got damaged by the work over the hills as well. But they've got some points on the board there. Forward we go, and it's an interesting looking little hill. I wonder if this is going to have any significance later on. 3%. Really just scouting, because looking at the number of, how outnumbered we are with TFC and the watts per kilo numbers that they're putting out, I don't really fancy just an out and out sprint with them. So spending these laps looking at the track, trying to get a feel. It's one thing to look at it on a map, but you don't get the feels of little gradients and things. So when we go to the next intermediate sprint, and this is quite sedate pace-wise leading up to it, but as we strike out, Brady again from TFC hitting 10 watts a kilo multiple times as well. So 10 watts a kilo backs off, power again, 10 watts a kilo again. Wasn't quite enough to take it, as Iverson of the Vikings took it, Brady 2nd, and Hill was 3rd. But more points for Team TFC, and they are looking really good. Now, if you watch, there's a funny Zwift thing here, is everyone just parts, just like the Red Sea. I don't know if it must be some sort of bug to do with the course, but it happens every lap that you go around there, and the riders in front of you all decide to go for a bit of cyclocross. Anyway, here we are on the last lap. There's the riders all splitting apart, and it was time to put my final plan into action, and onto the power we go. 850 watts, and you can see the gap just start to open. Now I expected to get maybe 2 or 3 seconds, maybe 4 seconds on just the initial break, the initial power, but still they are only on 3 watts a kilo, 2.5 watts a kilo at the front. TFC are leading the bunch with the Vikings there, and none of them are really trying to chase this. I saw some of their numbers sitting around 2.5 watts a kilo and thought, these guys aren't trying to chase me down. I think maybe they thought that the whole blob was going to be enough to come back, or that my pace would slow to a point that, I would just be tuckered out. But with 1.5 kilometers left, the gap's almost 10 seconds. And I know if I can just hold on around 350 watts, I can bring this home, and it's only going to be, 2 minutes, 3 minutes effort. It's manageable. And still nobody chased. The Italian, 3 watts a kilo, he was about the only one. As we fast forward a little bit here through the last kilometre, but really very little in the way of chasing. The gap continued to open up, 14 seconds, 15 seconds, and as we come up to the line, around 16 seconds it opens up, and nobody had chased. The heart rate, as you can see how much effort I was putting in, a heart rate of 197, 198 beats a minute. This was quite the sore one. Legs spinning at 100 RPM, and we would bring this one home for my first victory in Cat C. I get it's a mixed cat, so it's low Cat C, but the victory is there, and thank goodness for that. But boy, was I happy about that one. And you can see the results on screen here. It's a victory for Zwift Scotland and me, from David Brady and Roy Iverson. Thanks for joining me, guys. I'll see you next time.